2 days ago, Sayadaw spoke about how the Buddha mentioned that if one does not develop the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the 4 Satipatthanas, then one will miss this Satipatthana path, and the Eightfold Path will also be missed. If the 4 foundations of mindfulness are lost, are not developed, then they're lost. And also, the path to Nibbana, therefore, will not come to be. It will not be there open for us to walk. The path will be lost. And in that case, one will surely meet with suffering. On the other hand, if the 4 foundations of mindfulness are fulfilled, then the Eightfold Path comes about naturally. The path to Nibbana is open, and we can walk this path. Sayadaw spoke about the word arada, which is explained as paripona. This means full or sufficient, not excessive and not lacking, always enough. This word was used to describe the 4 foundations of mindfulness being fulfilled. In the yogi's body, kaya arises. There's the rising, falling, hardness, softness. There's flowing, sticking, cohesion, solidity. And there's also heat, warmth, coolness, lightness, and stiffness, tension, movement. Altogether, these are the 4 elements of earth, water, temperature, and air. And these are the main things that we observe. The main things that make up kaya. And these 4 elements are the hardness and softness. There's many, many particles of these, but they're all grouped together. There's the water that is flowing is made up of many, many particles of water. Things that are sticky are made up of many, many particles. Solid things made up of many, many particles of water. And when something is hot or warm, cool or light, there are many, many particles involved in this. And same with the air element, stiffness, tension, movement. These are all made up of many, many particles, and these are a group. And therefore, this word kaya is used. It means group. So what we observe is a group of rupa, a group of physicality. And when this collection of rupa, this rupa kaya, if we feel something bad, then there's a bad feeling. And if the physicality is good to touch, then it feels good. So this is a mental quality, feeling how we experience the object as good or bad, or also it can be neutral, neither good nor bad. At the start, though, mostly the yogis experience dukkha and sukha, what is unpleasant and what is pleasant. And these feelings are called Vedana in Pali. Vedana is also occurring in a group. There's a group of Vedana, so whether good, bad, or neutral. And the mind also, there's thinking, planning, reflecting, imagining, fantasizing. There's many, many types of mind. And when we meet up with something enticing, then there can be the mind that is associated with raga, and also the mind that is free of raga. When we see something that we dislike, the mind that is associated with anger can arise. And the mind can also be free of anger. There can be the mind that is associated with knowledge, the fresh mind, the weary mind. These collectively are known as chitta, or mind. And then there's objects such as seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, and also applying effort. There's joy, there's happiness, and these objects are called dhammas, or general objects. There can also be wanting sense pleasures, boredom, worry, doubt, and these also are dhammas, general objects or various objects. And in this category, there's both physical and mental objects. The Buddha said that there are these four fields of observation. Kaya, number 1. Number 2 is Vedana, or feeling. Number 3 is thinking, imagining, planning, and so on, known as chitta. And number 4 is all the various objects that are grouped together as Dhamma. And these collectively are called bhuta in Pali, B-H-U-T-A. And this word means they occur due to causes. Bhuta is something that arises due to causes. And it refers to everything that occurs in our being. With the method of Satipatthana, we apply effort as soon as an object arises. We apply effort to reach the object with the mind. And we can't be sluggish or sleepy when we do it. We have to be active and brisk. If we do so, if we apply effort energetically like this, we will dispel the kilesas, the mental defilements, beginning with laziness. What we mean is that we don't accept the kilesas in our mind. That's what's meant by dispelling them. And if mindfulness sticks to the object, then no mental defilement can enter into the mind stream. The mind is protected. The kilesas are blocked out, and so the mind is secure. And when the mind falls collectedly on the object, then the mind doesn't go to thoughts about sense pleasures, thoughts about known as kama vitaka, and it also doesn't go to vyavada vitaka, thoughts of wanting to harm, ahimsa, and it also doesn't go to mecha vitaka, to any type of wrong thought. This is where our mind will go if we miss a noting. But because the mind is falling collectively on the object, we are free of these wrong thoughts. Further, if we come to see the distinction between mentality and physicality, nama and rupa, and if we see how they're related as cause and effect, the mind is clear about what is there. The mind becomes clear. So there's no wrong beliefs can enter in. If we weren't seeing clearly, there would be the concept of person, or the concept of things coming about because of a creator. But because the clear seeing of sampajanya is present, is occurring, then we are free of these types of adhamma, or wrong views. So if we observe the arising physicality as it occurs firmly and steadfastly, this is kayanupassana satipatthana. When we observe the arising feeling, good or bad or neutral, as it occurs steadfastly, every time it occurs, this is Vedananupassana Satipatthana. observing as soon as it arises, every thinking, planning, imagining, fantasy, and so on, steadfastly, is Chittanupassana Satipatthana. And observing the arising, seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, and all the general objects, the Dhammas, as soon as they arise steadfastly, is Dhammanupassana Satipatthana. And this is something we must understand. The Buddha said that observing repeatedly so as to know the true nature that is really there within one's own being is called Anupassana. And the Buddha said that one has to have this practice of repeatedly observing what arises, what is really there in one's own being. So, in doing this, the Buddha defined 4 fields of observation. Kaya, which is only physical, it's rupa only. And Vedana, or feeling, good, bad, neutral. This is mental only, nama. And thinking, planning, imagining, and all the forms of chitta. This is also nama only, mental only. And then the various dhammas, general objects, seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, and smelling, and so on. These, in this category, the physical and the mental, rupa and nama, are mixed. So among these 4 large fields of observation that the Buddha defined, rupa, the physical, kaya, is the most obvious. And among these, the kaya is what we have to start with observing for human beings. This is the most easy to observe. And among these forms of physicality, the air element, vayodhatu, stiffness, tension, movement, this is the most obvious of all the types of physicality that are there. And Anapana is also vayodhatu, the air element. And when we observe lifting, moving, and placing, this is also observing the air element. Bending and stretching also, this is observing the air element of vayodhatu. Mahasi Sayadaw used the air in the abdomen, the air in the stomach, called kotasa vayodhatu, as the main object. But for the moment, we leave that aside. If we plant a field of rice, within that field there are smaller squares that are defined within that. And similarly, in the large fields of observation, these 4 kinds of 4 different types of fields of observation, there are small, like these little squares, small objects of observation arising all the time. And what we do is observe the prominent one, the one that is obvious, easy to see. So we start with observing the rising of the abdomen, the expansion of the abdomen as we breathe. This is obvious, this is evident. And this is made up of many units of stiffness, tension, and so on, grouped together. This is the rising. And this is a form of kaya. Anupassana means to repeatedly observe the arising object. And it also means to have the practice of observing repeatedly the arising object. So how do we observe this kaya? Well, we observe it as kaya. We observe it as it is. We don't observe it as Vedana, or chitta. We observe kaya as kaya. We observe it as it appears. Now the rising is a form of kaya, and when we observe the rising, we note it the way it is, rising. Falling of the abdomen, the collapsing, the feelings that come when the abdomen falls, this is also a form of kaya, and we label it as it is, as falling. And later on, we come to acquire this practice of repeatedly observing. So where do we observe? Well, within the kaya, we observe it as soon as it arises. And only if we apply ardent energy will Anapana occur. This repeated observation of the arising object. If we apply ardent effort, mindfulness will arise, and mindfulness will stick to the rising. So sati has to occur many times. Time and again, the sati sticks to the rising. This sati, mindfulness, is free of fault. It's not good if the mind goes to thoughts of sense pleasures and so on. And sati, with this repeated observation of kaya as kaya, repeated observation of the rising, we prevent our mind from doing that. Only if sati is present together with virya will anupasana occur. And when as good as sati is, to the extent that sati is good, the mind will fall collectively on the object. And when the mind falls collectively on the object, then it won't run anywhere. And only if this collectedness of mind, this samadhi is there, does anupasana occur. If the energy of virya, sati, and samadhi is fulfilled, then sampajanya, clear comprehension, as it's sometimes called, occurs. And we see the qualities that are really there, stiffness, tension, and movement that occur in the rising. And when feelings, good or bad, occur, we see them. We see pleasant feeling, we see painful feeling. We come to see the mind wandering. We see the activity of the mind. And we see how nama and rupa, the physical and the mental, occur in the moment of seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, and so on. Why is it that we come to see this? It's because our sati, our mindfulness, has become very good. And due to the sati being very good, samadhi is also very good. And thus, panya, knowledge, comes about. Only then does anupasana occur. So one must apply ardent effort every second of the time on the arising kaya to see it as it is. Due to the ardent effort, sati arises. Sati sticks to the object, and thus samadhi, also the mind, falls collectively on the object, and due to that, knowledge arises. Only if we develop these can we be said to have the practice of repeatedly observing the arising kaya as kaya. The arising kaya, for example, the rising movement, as it is, as rising. And one who has gained this practice is a real yogi. If one doesn't apply energy to observe the presently arising, rising, and falling, there's no application of energy that would cause sati to stick to the object. So this application of energy is not there. Thus, no Anupasana can occur. If energy is applied, but it's not applied fully, then sati won't stick to the object. If there's too much eagerness, excessive chanda or zeal, then the application of energy will also be excessive and will miss the object. Missing the object, sati can't stick to it. Thus one has to have the jhanic factor of aiming. This enables the mind to connect accurately with the object of the rising. So we need to apply energy and aim at the same time. So what we have to do is apply effort plus aiming to observe the rising when it happens. In doing that, the sati will stick to the rising. Our noting will be effective, and thus the quality of vichara will be there to rub against the object. And thus our mind will be fresh, and it will also be definite, decisive about the object. Only then does anupasana occur. If there's little effort, then sati can't arise. So if we just practice lightly, we will lose this anupasana. We will lose this seeing. And at a rate of one loss of anupasana per second, there will be 60 times in a minute that anupasana is lost due to light application of effort. And because there's no sati, collectedness of mind will also be lost. And thus, sampajanya, clear seeing, also is lost. So if these four qualities are not there, or if they don't have full energy, then no anupasana can occur. And in that case, when the object arises, there will be delusion. Moha will arise regarding the object. And when we miss a noting, when mindfulness is not there, then there will also be three other qualities together with delusion. There will be lack of shame regarding unwholesomeness, ahirika. And there will be lack of moral dread, this lack of wholesome fear regarding mental defilements. This is called anotapa. And there will also be restlessness, scattering of the mind, called odicca. And at minimum, these four qualities will be present when we miss a noting. So, when sati is not there, if we like the way the abdomen rises, then there will be greed for that. There will be clinging to that. If we don't like the way the abdomen rises, then there will be rejection of that, viroda or dosa. So this will occur in relationship to the objects if there's no sati, and thus if delusion arises. So from the starting with the application of energy, we have to develop the powers of sati, samadhi, and accurate aim, and panya. We have to have these mental powers, and when we do, no kilesas, mental defilements, will be able to enter our mind stream. We'll be free of these, clean. And thus it's said, loke vinaya beja domanasang. This means that with regard to the rising or the falling, whatever our object is, that we will dispel the abeja domanasa, the longing and the basically lobha and dosa, that would otherwise arise if we were not observing. Through our observation, we dispel these regarding the world, loka, which means the arising object. In this case, the rising and the falling. When one gains the ability to observe the rising and falling, one not only knows these, but one knows other objects as well, without opposing and without grasping, without either rejecting the object or holding on to it. The mind falls collectively on the object, and Anupasana occurs. So in this moment of the mind falling collectively on the object, Anupasana occurring, the kilesas, the kilesas are dispelled on a momentary basis, and this is called tedanga vinaya. Concerning this object, they are being dispelled. So there's no kilesa arising regarding the object that we observe. And when our observation takes place many times, time and time again, one after another, we distance the kilesas, so that this occurs due to the momentum of our noting. So this is a further type of dispelling. We dispel the kilesas by removing them, so that even though we miss a noting, kilesas don't have a chance to arise because our noting has so much momentum. And yogis, this is the immediate benefit that is gained by yogis who practice respectfully, meticulously, and without taking a break. Starting with virya. These mental energies that we gather together are called anupasana. Virya, sati, samadhi, and panya are the components of this anupasana. To make this anupasana fulfilled, to make it sufficient or complete, one has to have the practice of observing the arising object repeatedly, time and again. If so, because of the anupasana, we will see the object as it is, and thus, did I miss something? And thus, there will not be any ignorance regarding the object. There will be no moha, because we see it as it is due to anupasana. And there will not be the defilements of ahirika and anotapa, lack of shame and lack of moral dread. And because of the mindfulness, the sati that is generated, these qualities won't arise, ahirika and anotapa. And there will be no scattering of the mind either, odicca. So if one can master noting the rising and the falling, regarding the rising and the falling, there won't be any rejection, there won't be any dosa regarding it, and there will also be no grasping onto it, no lobha or greed. And there will be no other kilesas either. This is called tadanga vinaya, dispelling uprooting the kilesas at the time of anupasana. And when this occurs, when anupasana occurs time and time again, we distance the kilesas. Lobha and dosa are put far away. So this is also another type of vinaya, dispelling. So another way of looking at it is that regarding the object that we observe with anupasana, Tadanga vinaya, or momentary dispelling, occurs, dispelling of the kilesas. And when the kilesas are distanced, this dispelling of the kilesas regarding objects that we've missed is called vikambana vinaya, or dispelling them by distancing them. And a respectful yogi can gain these two benefits of Tadanga Vinaya and Vikambana Vinaya in a short time. When one's mind is clean, then it becomes refined and cultured. This is a truly cultivated mind. And this topic will be continued tomorrow night.